And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
There's a subcategory of games these days, of party games, of pitching games I call them. These are games where you're saying, hey everybody, I have something to sell you, and this is what you should buy, and this is why. Or persuasion, where you're trying to persuade somebody of something. And there's been some great games that have been made about that. We got Snake Oil, we got, but wait, there's more. Well, now we have one that's very specific, and this one is Bad Medicine. This is where you are selling drugs, trying to convince people, hey, this drug will cure this disease, and here is how. It's designed by Gil Hova. It's his new company, Formal Ferret Games. Gil Hova has designed Battle Merchants, selling weapons to fantasy races in combat, game that I enjoyed, so I was looking forward to this one. I especially like the box cover. Selling party games are one that strike my fancy, so let's find out. The game is made up of a giant pile of these Bad Medicine drug cards. This is the whole heart of the game. Each player has some tokens that for their team, so it shows you what color they are. You'll also get voting tokens for the other teams. Now, if you are playing with with more than 4 players, if you're playing 5, 6, 7, or 8, then there's a possibility, especially when you're playing with even players, each turn you're going to be on the same team as someone else, so these are kind of randomly pushed around, and so one person is going to formulate, the other person will pitch. I'll talk about that in a moment. If you're playing with 3 or 4 players, you do it yourself. And so you're going to have a handful of cards. There's quite a few blank cards in this game. I mean, a lot. But you'll get a handful of cards. And in the middle of the table, you're going to turn over one card and put this malady on top of it, and that's going to be the disease here. So in this case, it's itchy genitals. Perhaps it might be your flesh turns into tree bark. Here's spontaneous combustion, and a high-pitched shriek from anus when solving math problems, kidney failure. So we'll go with kidney failure. Then you're going to try to think of a name for your medicine that cures it. So maybe I'll pick Texaquo. Okay, Texaquo. I'm going to take 3 cards, put them together. I'm also going to pick 2 cards that are going to show basically the good things that it does. So Texaquo attacks kidney failure by making you fat, but hey, it works well. That fat breaks it down. And also the feathers. It uses some fat from duck feathers to help get rid of kidney failures. So each player in turn order will tell everyone their name, Texaquo. Then they'll use 2 cards to say this is how it cures kidney failure. Then each other player will give them a card. These cards are all mixed up of the cards you didn't use, and you will pick one of these as a bad side effect. Tongue falls out, piercing pain under fingernails, bones become magnetic, involuntary horrible screaming while sleeping. So let's say I picked this one. Whoever gave me this card immediately gets a point. All right? But then I have to explain why this side effect isn't so bad. I'll say, well, yeah, there is involuntary horrible screaming while sleeping, but since, that's better than dying, right? And really, you're asleep, so you don't really know that you're doing this. And besides, it keeps people knowing that you are still alive. So I explain that. Everyone then votes secretly as to which pitch they think is the best. Maybe I think the blue player. And then you get 2 points for each one vote that you get. And then you start another round, and the side effect of the winning disease becomes the malady that you have to treat next round. Now, when you're playing with teams, the difference is one person is giving their teammate the card. So I might say, all right, you sin done pit, and you're going to be curing involuntary horrible screaming while sleeping with the ability to cook and chromosomes, and your side effect is you sneeze glitter. But I give all this to you, and you will turn these cards over one at a time and pitch them without knowing what you're about to pitch. You pitch them, everyone's like, what? Okay, and then the same thing happens, except now the points change a little bit, and you can't vote for your own teammate when playing the game. Whoever has the most points wins. That's how you play. Now, Bad Medicine doesn't work really well unless people are proactive, energetic, outgoing people. For the most part, you can kind of haze your way through things, but that's always going to be a disadvantage of the selling games. I can't hold that against bad medicine. That's the way these games are. You have to kind of be out there and be ready to push it. And it also does tend to it has some fragility where somebody can come and basically say, oh, you know what? Well, I know that Sue just gave a really good pitch, but she's winning, so I'm not voting for her. And that's always a problem with these games. Very easily solvable. Don't play with those people. The game is really boring with 3 to 4 players. It really is. It's another one of these games that's It's much better with 5 or more. And by the way, with an odd number of players, one person's a Surgeon General, and they kind of pitch their own thing. So it's best really with even. The idea of giving someone else the cards and having them explain them is a good one. I like that concept, especially when they're on their team, because you're not going to set them up for disaster, but at the same time, you're limited by the cards that you get. Here is why I don't like the game, though. There's several reasons. One of them, and this is the main one, is the game is too limiting. See, when I play games like The Big Idea or Snake Oil or But Wait, There's More, there's all sorts of things. I could be selling you a drug, but I could also be selling you a new TV set. There's all sorts of things. This one's limited to drugs. And that's just, it's like playing Trivial Pursuit with just one of the categories. And that's interesting for a little while, but I don't think it's enough to sustain the game as it goes along. It's more drugs, more drugs. And that on top of the fact that really there's a lot of gross and unfun things in medical science, and so your chance of getting something that someone actually is dealing with exists. And then since there wasn't enough of that that's interesting, then they came up with things like, your skin turns into bark, or you turn into a zombie, tentacles growing out of your armpits, which is interesting, but the other big problem with this game is it's kind of trying to force that humor. These games are best when you make the funny, not the game. And these cards are kind of really pushing that. I mean, even the names on the cards, when fart is one of the words on the card, it's like, my drug name has fart in it, snicker, snicker, snicker. And it almost feels like, hey, this game was made for advanced gamers with this interesting scoring method, and then there's a fart joke in it. And those two things don't seem to work together as well as I like them to. I just wasn't as keen on how this game came together. There's a lot of party games out there, right? And in this category specifically, there's a decent amount of them. So this one needs to stand out. And unfortunately, all I can say is, it's about medicine. Okay, well, that doesn't really appeal to a lot of people anyway. And then secondly, you're going to put together a word that has F-U-K in it. Ha, 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 ha. Yeah, no. There's some funny moments in the game. I won't argue that. But for the most part, I didn't even smile during a lot of the games I played because it just didn't. It felt more juvenile than I was hoping for. And I don't want to say that because silly party games, I'm all there for it. But this game was like, hey, you will laugh by reading this word out loud. And certainly the game is kind of pushing more towards that edgy humor, although edgy is kind of a weird name since it's the humor that appeals to teenagers. But so overall, cool packaging. The idea sounded interesting. The execution, though, while I'm sure a lot of people will like it because I looked online and I'm not in the majority here in my opinion, but for me, it was a dud. Dice Tower Judgment, funny for some, but not for me.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.